Hello friends. Let's talk about what generative governance actually looks like. Now, generative governance is one of the most talked about ideas in board work and perhaps one of the least clearly understood. Many board members will have encountered the term through the work of Drs. Chait and Ryan, where governance is described as operating in three modes: fiduciary, strategic, and generative. Fiduciary governance is very familiar to you. It's about the stewardship, it's about risk management and protection. Strategic governance is familiar too. It's about setting priorities and making plans and setting the direction for the school. But generative governance often gets described more vaguely as big picture thinking or blue sky discussion. And that's part of the problem, because when something feels abstract, boards struggle to practice it with discipline. So let's be clear about what generative governance is not. It's not philosophical debate or speculative discussion or delaying action just for the sake of it. Generative governance is not about doing less. It's about thinking better before doing anything at all. At its core, generative governance is about problem framing. Before a board asks, "What should we do?" it asks, "What kind of issue is this?" Now, that sounds simple, but it's the step that most boards skip, especially when under pressure. Boards are full of capable people and they're used to solving problems in their day jobs. So when an issue appears, the instinct is to act. Plans are requested, timelines are proposed, assurances are sought. All very reasonable moves, if the problem has already been framed correctly, that is. But when framing is skipped, boards often govern the wrong thing really well. This is where a diagnostic lens becomes useful. Instead of treating generative governance as a vague mindset, it gives boards something concrete to work with. Here are the two key questions. First, where does this issue primarily sit? Is it at the level of an individual, a team, or the wider system? And what kind of work does it require? Is it relational, operational, or strategic? And just to be clear, those questions don't provide answers. They create a clarity of orientation, a center of gravity, if you like, for where the issue lies. And you can actually see it on a map. Not a map of people, but a map of problems. One dimension helps boards locate where the issue is concentrated, the individual, a group, or the organization as a whole. And the other helps boards recognize what kind of work is needed. Is it relational work to build trust and gain clarity? Is it operational work? Or is it strategic sense-making? Nothing in this map is good or bad, it's simply different terrain. The mistake boards can make is in assuming that all terrain can be crossed the same way. Now, at this point, boards often say, "We understand the idea, but how do we keep doing this consistently?" Because under pressure, even experienced boards revert to their old habits. And this is where having a shared framing structure matters. In the board deck, generative governance isn't treated as a mindset so much as it's treated as a repeatable practice. The deck gives boards a common diagnostic language. So the question, "What kind of problem is this?" doesn't depend on who happens to be in the room. And it makes two distinctions explicit: where the issue sits at an individual team or system, and what kind of work it requires, relational, operational, or strategic. Those distinctions don't replace judgment, they support it. They allow boards to surface different interpretations, to test assumptions, and align on framing before moving into fiduciary or strategic action. That's the practical heart of generative governance, not abstract thinking, but shared orientation. So what does generative governance look like in practice? Well, let's go through a few examples. If an issue sits at the team level and is strategic in nature, then moving straight into detailed planning would be premature. For example, Senior leaders may be using the same language of quality and impact and improvement, but holding very different assumptions about what those words mean. In that case, the problem isn't execution, it's shared understanding. The generative question isn't what's the plan, it's are we aligned in how we're seeing this? That pause is generative governance in action. If an issue sits at the system level and is operational, then vision and encouragement won't solve it. For example, capable people may be working really hard, yet outcomes vary depending on department to department or their role or the context. That's a signal not of poor performance, but of misaligned processes, structures, and workflows. Here, generative governance sounds like, what patterns are we noticing across the system? Where might the system be working against itself or against our intentions? The board isn't fixing the system, it's making it visible. And if an issue sits at the individual level and is relational, then frameworks, policies, and restructures are the wrong tools. For example, trust may be eroding the behavior, communication style, or unresolved tension, even though formal expectations may be clear. In that case, generative governance involves this isn't a policy problem, it's about professional relationships and conduct. Again, the board's value lies in naming the nature of the issue, not in prescribing the solution. Notice what all of these examples have in common. Generative governance is not indecision, but it's deliberate orientation. It creates the conditions for better fiduciary and strategic work later. When the board skips this step, oversight often becomes heavy-handed, strategy becomes brittle, and the same issues often resurface under new labels. But when boards practice it, meetings become calmer and questions become sharper and decisions land with greater legitimacy. So if a board has been told they need to be more generative, but no one's explained what that actually means in practice, here's a really useful starting point for you. Generative governance is simply the discipline of asking, what kind of problem is this, and what kind of work does it require from us? That question doesn't slow boards down. It stops them acting with confidence, but in the wrong direction.